It's Neo Geo time. It's Neo Geo time. We're back singing the Neo Geo song and playing some Neo Geo games. And this is a big one. This is the King of Fighters 98, the Slugfest. Or what's it called in Japan? King of Fighters 98 Dream Match Never Ends or Never Dies? Something like that. It's got a different weird subtitle in Japan. Anyway, King of Fighters. Absolutely one of the most huge SNK franchises. King of Fighters 98, what a lot of people consider the best King of Fighters game. My King of Fighters knowledge is very, very poor compared to my Street Fighter knowledge, but from my experience, I've always seen King of Fighters 98 kind of as the Street Fighter 2 Turbo of King of Fighters. Like, it's the one that people know, it's the one that people remember, it's the one that people play. It's what a lot of people say is the best one. That's me pressing the wrong button. I always forget which the actual start button is on the Switch. So yeah, we're going to find out why. What is going on? Okay, right. We're working out the controls. That's what's going on. So, I mean, look at this character roster. It's absolutely huge. Let me just choose my characters and then I will talk. We've got King, we've got Terry. Where's GEO? He's up here. Okay. So you'll see on the character roster there, one of the things that I think is dead cool about King of Fighters, particularly these later ones that have got tons and tons of characters. They split up the characters into these teams. So you've got the SNK team. You've got one of them that people call the Old Men team. You've got like the Team China team. That's maybe not what it's called at all, but yeah, you can. The character select screens like split up into threes, and then each of these threes is like a little team, and maybe from the games they came from. Like there's a Fatal Fury team, and I just love it. I think it's really cool. It gives this, like, the King of Fighters roster is absolutely huge, and it's a bit daunting, you know. And it gives it a bit of context. Like, it's not just a huge roster of random characters. It kind of, it gives them little bit of context. So you can say, right, I'm going to start with this team, particularly because as we just saw, you pick 3 characters in King of Fighters games. So you don't tag in and out like you do in like the Marvel versus games. But when one character is beaten, another character jumps in. For example, Blue Mary. So that's a huge differentiator of King of Fighters compared to something like Street Fighter, which it's, you know, obviously compared to. So, just trying to kind of get my grips with this. King is my favourite King of Fighters character. Absolutely love King. You may recognise King from Art of Fighting. King is in the Art of Fighting games. But totally kicks butt. So King of Fighters 98, this is the 5th King of Fighters game. Can you guess what year it came out? It came out in 1998. I quite like the King of Fighters games used to name themselves after the year rather than kind of numerical. I guess that means it kind of broke it whenever you ported it to another console. Like, I think the PlayStation version of this came out in 99 maybe. And by that point there's already a King of Fighters 99 and 2000, you know, like, it kind of breaks it, but I quite like it. Let's just see what we do. Yeah, so the 5th King of Fighters game, and I believe this is, I read this is the first game to come to the PlayStation since 95. So I guess they missed loads. They missed 97. They missed, like, I'm trying to put this into some context of when Street Fighter was huge, when I was that age, you know, in the late 90s. King of Fighters was so, like, just not in the picture for me. It's not that I didn't like it. It's just that I didn't know it existed. Street Fighter was the game. I don't know if that was the same kind of everywhere outside of Japan. But certainly in my world, in the UK, growing up as a kid then, it was all about Street Fighter. Street Fighter was on everyone's Super Nintendo. Street Fighter was at the arcades. Just didn't know King of Fighters. And then I would eventually go on to read about it in magazines when UK magazines started covering Neo Geo stuff, and eventually compilations started coming out on the PlayStation 2 and stuff like that, and you started to get a kind of understanding of these games, but it was always this kind of mysterious, exotic Japanese fighting game that I didn't know and I didn't understand. And I'm wondering whether the console ports is a big part of that. If they missed a lot of them on the PlayStation until '98, maybe that's why everybody knows '98, and that's why it's a big deal. Because I think console ports have often got a lot to do with things like that. Obviously, because how many people have an arcade in their town? Even in the '90s, that wasn't the case. So the other thing that's interesting about '98 is that it's kind of like a super game, like a Game of the Year version of King of Fighters. There was obviously King of Fighters '94, I believe there was '95, '96 and '97. I think they were yearly, but '98 was like it's got no story. It throws out the story, and then with that they brought back loads of characters that had kind of died in the game's story, and it's just this like huge compilation. It's got tons of characters compared to the earlier games. I picked up King of Fighters '94 on the Switch, and I was kind of shocked at how small the character roster was, because I'm used to playing '98 and 2000, which are absolutely ginormous rosters. Not to mention King of Fighters 14, the newest PS4 one. That's not the earlier ones. They have a smaller character roster, and similar to Street Fighter, they've got this kind of overriding story, and sometimes characters will die in the story. This one they just throw all that out and they just put everybody in. So it's kind of this greatest hits, and maybe that's why it's so good. I don't know. What I'd really like, if you follow my channel, you might be aware that I do a series called All of the Street Fighters, where I look at all the Street Fighter games, and we look at how they changed and what characters they added and what new mechanics each one added. And I would love that for King of Fighters. So if anybody knows of a channel or a video series where somebody's looking at the King of Fighters games and talking about why each one's significant and what the changes are, I would absolutely love to see it. I'm not going to make it because I just don't know. I don't have the knowledge. I kind of grew up with Street Fighter, so I've got this basic knowledge of all of the Street Fighters, and that's made that series very easy to make because I don't have to do that much research. I do research, but I've just grown up with it, so I already know a lot. King of Fighters, I'm just very ignorant of, to be honest. I've grown to love it, and probably in the last 6 or 7 years, I've really started to play it, and I think I picked up King of Fighters 12 on the Xbox 360. Was probably like my first serious time playing it, and then I picked up all the old games on Steam, and then obviously since this series has started releasing on the Switch, I've been buying all the Neo Geo games, and that means I've rebought 98 and 94, and I think they've also released 96, which I haven't yet bought because I feel like maybe there's only so many of these King of Fighters games you need. But yeah, I would like somebody to prove me wrong. I'd like to watch some content that talks about these games in a bit more depth. So yeah, do recommend me something if you know of its existence. So my kind of main modern knowledge of King of Fighters is playing King of Fighters 14, which is the PS4 and Steam release. And I don't know if you know anything about that, you'll know that they've like changed up the visuals in a big way, and it was quite controversial at release. And they've since updated it, and they've changed the graphics a bit and added in a new lighting engine. And I think generally people are quite happy with it. But for me, what's kind of famous about the older King of Fighters games is the incredible sprite work. Like, as much as I love Street Fighter and I love the design of Street Fighter and I love the characters and stuff, like the 2D sprite work and design of King of Fighters just blows it out of the water. I mean, they're just stunning games. I mean, these look good, but you should check out King of Fighters 13, I think it was, on the PS3 and 360, for like modern, beautiful 2D sprite work. Just absolutely stunning. I've just always loved the look of these games. The animation is just brilliant, and considering how many characters, I mean, you've seen the character select screen. Like, it's got an absolutely massive roster, and every character is just beautifully animated. They all kind of play very differently. Some have got weapons. It's just, I don't know. It just, I've always loved it, and it's constantly a pleasure to play. I also love that your characters that are still to come in the fight, your other two characters, kind of hang around in the background of the stage, waiting for their turn. I like that a lot. So as usual, these Neo Geo games I'm playing them on Switch, but King of Fighters 98 is just available on everything. This is on PS4, it's on Xbox One, it's on Steam, it's on Xbox 360, it's on PS3, I think it's on iOS and Android, which I don't recommend you play. But yeah, it's easy to find no matter what console you have. I mean, maybe if this was like 3 years ago, I would say the Wii and the Wii U were the ones that were missing it. Although, no, maybe it was on the Virtual Console. They released some Neo Geo games on the Virtual Console, didn't they? I think they probably did. But yeah, since they've started releasing these Neo Geo series on the Switch, they're available even if you're a Nintendo player. And yeah, I can't recommend it enough. If you've got an interest in 2D fighters and you've never played in a King of Fighters game, and you've always wondered where to start because there are an absolute ton of them and they've all got really similar names, I think 98 is generally the one that people recommend, and I think it's easy to see why. So I would note that I'm playing this on Switch and I'm playing it with the Joy-Con controllers in their little grip dock thing. I've got the Switch docked, playing on my TV, and I own the Pro Controller, and I do kind of 99% of my Switch playing with the Pro Controller because it's great in absolutely most respects. And I say most because the D-pad, if you play King of Fighters, if you play Guru Mark of the Wolves, if you play Hyper Street Fighter 2, please do not play them with the Pro Controller because it has got the worst D-pad known to mankind. It's just shocking, which is surprising, knowing how great Nintendo D-pads have historically been. They owned the patent on brilliant D-pads, literally owned the patent on it. They've just dropped the ball on the Pro Controller D-pad. It's ridiculous. It's hard to describe without you trying it. But if you can imagine a traditional D-pad, it kind of rocks from the centre. It's kind of connected in the centre, and you can kind of rock it left and right and up and down. And that's how you use it, really. You kind of rock your thumb back and forth. The Switch Pro Controller D-pad is just like one big button, and you can push it down. If you push it down, if you put your thumb right in the centre of it and push it down, the whole D-pad kind of presses down uniformly. And what that means is the connectors underneath it are really easily disturbed when you hit in other directions. So you try and do diagonal hits with it, and you try and be precise, and it's impossible. You just hit loads of false inputs every time you're using it, which is fine generally. If you're playing a 2D platformer game or something, I don't know, if you're playing probably something like Super Meat Boy even, or Wonder Boy. I'm trying to think of other things I've been using it with 2D games, but generally it's okay if you just do in individual directions. But I try and play Street Fighter with this thing, and I can't hit a Hadouken. I've been playing Street Fighter for almost my whole life. I can successfully hit a Hadouken every time. It's not difficult. It's pretty basic. But I can try it 10 times on the Pro Controller and probably hit it twice. It's that bad. And some people say some Pro Controllers don't have this issue, and some do. I think that's rubbish. I think it's just the design of the D-pad. I don't think there's faults in them. I just think they've put a weird design in. And yeah, as much as people were kind of horrified that the Switch Joy-Con didn't have a traditional D-pad, they've got the 4 buttons on the left Joy-Con. I actually think it's perfect. I think it's an absolutely fine D-pad, and particularly for fighting games, it's really accurate, and I hit my inputs all the time. And so if I'm playing any of these Neo Geo fighters, or if I'm playing Street Fighter 2, totally the Joy-Cons in the grip, the one con, absolutely every time, and I would recommend that to anybody. So that's King of Fighters 98. I think it's probably time to wrap it up there. I did notice that my capture card had stopped capturing halfway through this, so I've reset it. So that's why the game is reset halfway through this chat. But I don't think anything I've said relates strictly to anything that's been on screen, so it doesn't matter if it doesn't sync up. I don't know what I'm rambling about. This is my editing problems, not your viewing problems. Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it. Do please recommend me some King of Fighters content if you know what I'm talking about when I said I want some King of Fighters videos that talk about the history of the series, because I'm really interested in that and I would love to learn more. So if you're one of the big SNK fans that watch these videos, yeah, drop me a line. Yeah, and with that, I'll say goodbye, and I will see you next Monday. Every Monday, Neo Geo Play. I'll catch you then. All right, bye.